Okay, let's dive into some pretty monumental source material today.
Yeah, sounds good.
We're looking at an article. This one's from 10mosttoday.com, and it's called 10 Most Famous Statues in the World.
Right. And our goal here isn't just, to read off a list. We want to dig into the key details, sure, but maybe more the surprising bits, the significance that this source points out, what makes these ones famous, according to them.
Exactly. What makes this list tick? Why these specific sculptures? Let's jump right in.
Okay, so thinking about fame. Sometimes it's just sheer age, isn't it? And like mystery. The source takes us way back for the first few.
You really can't get much older or, more mysterious than the Great Sphinx of Giza
Yeah.
in Egypt. It's just there. This incredible mythical thing. Lion's body, human head.
Right, on the Giza Plateau. And what's really striking, the source makes this point. It's not just the form, but the scale and the age together. Calls it the largest monolith statue in the world.
The numbers are crazy. 73.5 meters long,
Yeah, huge.
over 19 meters wide, and more than 20 meters high.
It's just massive. And the age, the article says it's believed to be the oldest known monumental sculpture, built by the ancient Egyptians like 2558 to 2532 BC.
That's just, it's almost impossible to grasp how old that is. So yeah, extreme age, huge scale, plus that mystery.
Yeah,
That seems to be a key recipe for fame here.
absolutely. And okay, moving from Egypt, but staying with the ancient, the mysterious, the sort of colossal heads theme,
Mm.
the source points us towards Mexico, the Olmec colossal heads.
Oh, these are amazing. From the Olmec
Mm.
civilization, right? They were flourishing around, what, 1400 BC to 400 BC?
Yeah, that's the period. And these are these enormous helmeted heads. The thinking, according to the source, is that they're probably portraits of rulers.
Right. And what makes them stand out, the article says, is how individual they are. Like, no two are the same.
Exactly. Each headdress is different, distinctive elements. They found 17 of them, and they vary quite a bit in size from, just under 1.5 meters up to almost 3.5 meters tall.
So it's like this really personal window into this powerful ancient culture.
Yeah, it gives you that unique glimpse.
Okay, so we've got these ancient mysteries, different kinds of scale and power. From Mexico, the article then takes us way out into the Pacific, Easter Island, the Moai.
Ah, yes. The Rapa Nui figures. Instantly recognizable, aren't they? Those massive heads.
Right. The source actually quantifies it, says the heads are like 3/8 of the entire statue's size.
Which is pretty distinctive, and these are monolithic figures, carved between 1250 and 1500 AD, roughly.
And the scale, again.
Huh.
The article gives examples. The tallest one they actually put up, called Pero, nearly 10 meters high and weighed 75 tons.
75 tons, moved and put up without, modern cranes or anything. It's kind of nuts.
Totally. And the heaviest one they erected was even more, 86 tons.
And then there's this mention of an unfinished one that just shows the ambition. It could have been 21 meters tall, maybe 270 tons.
Wow.
So the insight here seems to be that combination, The unique look, the sheer scale, the mystery of how they did it, plus being on this super remote island, it all adds to the legend.
It really does make you wonder about the people who made them, their ingenuity, their reasons. Okay, staying ancient, but shifting location. Greece this time. The Terrace of the Lions on Delos.
Right. Delos Island, which is, a hugely important place, mythologically, historically, archaeologically.
Yeah, the source mentions it was a holy sanctuary for like 1,000 years before Greek mythology even linked it to Apollo and Artemis being born there.
Exactly. And these lions, they were dedicated to Apollo by the people of Naxos just before 600 BC.
And originally there were, what, maybe 9 to 12 of these marble lions?
Yeah.
Sort of guarding the sacred way?
That's the idea. But the source notes only 5 have survived mostly intact, plus fragments of 3 others.
And they're not actually on the terrace anymore, are they, the originals?
No, quite rightly. They moved the originals into the Delos Museum back in 1999 to protect them. So what you see out there today are replicas.
Okay, so the insight here is maybe less about a single statue, more about a group serving this ancient, sacred, protective role. And their fame is tied up with this incredibly significant site, even if the actual ancient pieces are indoors now.
Precisely. It's about the collection and the context.
Okay, so we've covered quite a bit of ground with these ancient wonders. Fame driven by mystery, scale, effort, sacred spots. Let's shift gears. Moving closer to our time, thinking about symbols that maybe define nations or commemorate more. well, modern history.
Yeah, this is where the list brings in figures that really resonate with, like national identity or modern beliefs. And you have to start, really, with the Statue of Liberty, New York.
Absolutely. Can't get much more iconic. The source reminds us it was a gift, right?
Yeah.
From the people of France to the U.S.
Yep, dedicated in 1886, specifically for the 100th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence.
And it's on Liberty Island, and it's become, well, it's more than just a statue, isn't it? The article points out it's this powerful icon of freedom, this welcoming sign for immigrants.
Definitely. So the insight there is how a single sculpture, starts as this diplomatic gift, but then just evolves over time into this incredibly potent symbol with so many layers of meaning, a global beacon, really.
From freedom in the U.S., the list then heads south, Brazil, Christ the Redeemer in Rio.
Ah, yeah. High up on Corcovado Mountain, looking out over Rio. The source highlights its scale, but also its style. It calls it the largest Art Deco statue in the world.
Art Deco, right. And the fifth largest statue of Jesus overall. It's 30 meters tall plus an 8-meter pedestal.
And those arms stretching 28 meters wide. It's an amazing silhouette.
It really is so distinctive.
Mm.
And built much more recently between 1926 and 1931, the article nails it, calling it the icon for Rio, Brazil's most famous monument.
Yeah, so here the insight is about a modern statue, stylistically important, becoming this powerful religious symbol, but also a cultural identifier for a whole city, a whole nation.
Okay. And from that kind of national belief symbol, the source takes us to Russia, a symbol of, well, national struggle and victory. The motherland calls.
In Volgograd, which used to be Stalingrad, it commemorates the Battle of Stalingrad, a really pivotal moment in World War II.
And what makes it stand out, the source says, is partly its sheer size at the time. When it went up in 1967, it was declared the largest statue in the world, 85 meters tall.
Yeah, massive. And the article adds this interesting little fact. It was the last non-religious statue to hold that record. After that, the record holders were all Buddhist figures.
Huh, okay.
But maybe what's even more compelling, and the source kind of hints at this, is the engineering challenge. That pose soared high, hand reaching out, it's so dynamic, not static at all, must have been incredibly complex to build.
You'd think so. And the symbolism is really baked in too, like the 200 steps leading up to it. The source says that represents the 200 days of the battle.
Right, so the fame here is clearly tied to commemorating this incredibly significant historical event, achieved through huge scale, tricky engineering, and these layers of built-in symbolism. All right, so moving away from those big national or religious statements, the list also includes statues that are famous more for, say, artistic mastery, or representing some kind of human state, or even just telling a story.
Yeah, this brings us right into the heart of the Renaissance, doesn't it? Michelangelo's David in Italy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A total icon of artistic skill, created between 1501 and 1504. It's that 5.17-meter marble statue of David, the biblical hero.
Depicting him just before the fight with Goliath,
Yep.
right? That moment of resolve.
Exactly. And it's been in the Accademia Gallery in Florence since 1873. So with David, the insight feels different. It's not really commemorating a modern nation or a specific battle in that same way. It's about, well, the absolute peak of art, the ideal human form, heroic spirit. It basically represents the Renaissance itself. People travel from everywhere just to see it.
From that ideal form to maybe a more universal human experience. The thinker is on the list too.
Auguste Rodin's bronze. Yeah, that classic image, the nude man, chin on his hand, just lost in thought, representing philosophy, deep contemplation.
It's instantly recognizable.
Totally. And the article notes something interesting. While we think of the thinker, there are actually quite a few full-size castings out there, maybe around 28.
Oh, really? I didn't know there were that many.
Yeah, about 186 centimeter high. Apparently not all were made directly under Rodin's supervision, but the fact that so many exist speaks to how powerful and resonant that pose is. It started as part of something else back in 1880, but the famous big bronze version we know showed up around 1904.
So the insight there is about fame, coming from capturing this really universal human state, deep thought, and a single unforgettable pose that kind of breaks free from its original
I
content.
think so, yeah. It just resonates.
And then finally on this list, there's a figure famous not for being huge or historically epic, but maybe more for charm and story. The Little Mermaid in Denmark.
Right. The bronze statue in Copenhagen Harbor, based on the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale. And the source points out how, well, small it is. Only 1.25 meters tall.
It really is surprisingly small if you've seen pictures or, expect something grander.
Yeah.
Especially compared to, like, The motherland calls.
Exactly. But despite the size, the article says it's become this major icon for Copenhagen, a huge tourist draw since 1913.
Though it also mentions, sadly, that it gets vandalized quite a bit.
Yeah, that seems to be a downside of its fame and accessibility. So the insight here is almost a counterpoint to the others. Fame driven not by scale or massive history, but by connecting to this beloved story, becoming a cherished local symbol, even if that fame brings its own problems. So looking back across this whole list from the source, what's really interesting is just how varied the reasons are for these statues being considered most famous. It's definitely not just one thing.
No, absolutely not. We've seen, like, incredible age, massive scale, historical weight, pure artistic genius, sheer mystery, cultural symbolism, links to literature, even engineering feats. It's a real spectrum that this source's selection covers.
It really shows the different ways a sculpture can sort of lodge itself in the global consciousness and stay there.
Yeah. And it's interesting, too, the source mentions its own comment section, people asking questions.
Right, like someone wondering why the Venus Milo wasn't on this list, or others wanting more history on the ones that were included.
Which just goes to show, doesn't it? That idea of famous can be pretty subjective.
Yeah.
And people connect not just with the object, the statue itself, but with the story behind it, the history, the whole context. That's kind of what makes the stone or the metal feel alive, you know? Okay, let's try and wrap this up a bit. Looking back at this deep dive, based on the source, we've really jumped across time and space, haven't we? Exploring this incredible diversity. Scale, age, purpose, meaning.
Yeah, from ancient monoliths that are still kind of mysterious to these towering modern symbols of nations or faith.
From Renaissance perfection to figures just representing thought or even a character from a fairy tale.
And what really stands out, I think, is how these sculptures, even though they're so different, all act as these incredibly potent symbols.
Yeah, they make abstract things tangible, like freedom, faith, victory, thought, beauty, or just the feeling of a story. They're like these physical anchors to human history, our beliefs, identity, art.
Things that have lasted across cultures and across centuries, even millennia in some cases.
They really are. They make you think, don't they?
Yeah.
About what we value, what we choose to remember, how we represent ourselves.
Which kind of leaves us with a final thought, picking up on the conversation this source itself sparked. How do all these incredibly different figures, mythical creatures, ancient kings, heroes, ideas, storybook characters, how do they reflect this huge, messy, evolving tapestry of human history and human values over all this time? And maybe more specifically, thinking about this list from the article, what is it about these pieces, based on what the source highlights, that lets them stick around in our collective memory as global icons when so many others just fade away? Something to maybe ponder next time you see a statue.